Hey everyone, I just updated some of the components in my studio PC. Basically, I wanted to make it a bit quieter, so I put it in a new case, I put some new fans on it, and I changed to an all-in-one cooler instead of the old heatsink and fan design. And as part of that, obviously I had to really think about the cooling, the airflow, so I thought I'd create a quick video just about the things I had to think about. Now, the first thing to remember when we're thinking about the cooling of the computer is that heat rises. And the cooler air, that's going to sink down. And so when we think about placing the various fans that we're going to have in our computer, we need to go with that general flow of the temperature. And we're going to want to take heat out of the machine. We have many things inside the PC that generate heat, and we'll talk about those. And the way we need to move that heat around is really blowing air over it. So we have a lot of fans inside the computer. Now, those fans might be different sizes. They might spin at different speeds. But if we assume they're the same size and we assume they're spinning at the same speed, when we think about the fans, what we want to make sure is we either have the same number that's bringing air into the machine that are exhausting it, or have more coming in than are going out. So if we think about, maybe I have, let's say, 4 fans bringing air in, then I wouldn't want more than 4 fans taking the air out. So maybe, for example, I've got 3 fans exhausting here and 1 there. So that's fine, there's the same number. Or maybe in this case, maybe I wouldn't have this fan here, so I've got some less. So I want to think about, I want more coming in or equal to the number that are going out. It's just about positive pressure. If I have more going out, then there's a negative pressure. You may get air being brought in from other places. You just may get a little bit more dust build up. I don't think it's a huge difference, but if we can help it, we're going to go with that direction. Now, if I consider the components in my PC that are generating this heat, and there's 2 main ones. Obviously, I can think about, we have the CPU. We have that brain of the computer. That's generating lots of heat we need to get rid of. Most computers now will have a separate graphical processing unit, a GPU card. This goes in the PCI bus. It might take up 2 or 3 different slots, depending on the size. It has a big heat sink and lots of fans on it. That's generating lots of heat as well. And then also the power supply unit. So that power supply unit, it generates heat also. And so we have to get rid of that heat. And getting rid of that heat is all about fans. We need to get air moving over these components, and we need to bring cool air in from outside the case and then get rid of that warm air. But we want a nice flow of air. So we want the fans all going in the same direction as much as we can. And remembering that heat rises, so it makes sense to be exhausting air up towards the top of the case. Now, to do that, therefore, we have fans. We're going to have lots of fans. And the important thing to remember is, if I think about my fan, I'll try and draw a 3D fan, but I'm going to do a terrible job, I'm sure. My 3D fan, there's going to be some supports on one of the sides. And I'll show this in a second. And then you've got the fan, and then it's got blades on the fan that's spinning. Obviously, the air is being brought in from one direction to blow it out the other direction. So we can think about, hey, look, it's bringing the air in, and then the air is being sent out the other way. And it's important we align the fans the right way. If I was to look at this fan, for example, right here, we can see on one side there's all the supports. That is very commonly going to be the exhaust side. So if I was putting this in the machine, I would have it this way. So the nice side with just a nice logo sticker, there's no supports visible. That's going to be bringing the air in, and it's going to spin that way. And so then it's blowing the air into the case. So it would be the supports facing the inside. On this side, hey, the nice side would be facing inside the case. So I'm going to get that same air flow. On the bottom, hey, the nice side is facing out to bring the air in. Hey, I'm going to exhaust up the top. If you're unsure, so let's try a little experiment, you can always just plug it in. So if I plug in this fan for a second, try and not cut my hand off when I start it spinning. So it's spinning. If you just hold a tissue up to it, so there's a nice side, we can see it's blowing away. So what we said was accurate. The support side is the exhaust. The other side is the intake. So we can see that's happening. Also, and another sure way to tell is most of the time it's going to have an indication on the fan. If I look around where the sticker is, and you won't see it, I'll do a zoom in the video, there's actually an arrow, in this case pointing up. So that's showing me the direction of the airflow. So you can find that little arrow, it's pointing this way, so the air is coming in, going out that way. There's also an arrow showing the spin of the fan. So it's showing it downwards. So on my picture, I could look at the side. So there's a little arrow showing me the spin. And there's also an arrow showing me the direction the fans are spinning. And it makes sense. There's a certain curvature to the fans. So if you think about what they're doing, there's a curve this way. They're moving in this direction. So the fan is going that way. And it's scooping the air and redirecting it where it wants to go. So the fans are spinning downwards, grabbing the air and sending it that way. So there's lots of ways you can tell, but it's really important to make sure you have the right direction when you're putting in the fans, because you want them to be going in a consistent way. So now we understand. We're going to make sure we've got our fans oriented the right way. So now, what are those components in a bit more detail that are making that heat, and how do we make the heat go away? Well, the power supply unit, that's typically going to have a fan built in. So if we look at our power supply unit, there's normally a fan at the bottom. And what that fan is doing is it's pulling in air. So it's sucking up the air, and then the warm air, somebody's got some vents coming out the back, so it's going that way. Maybe it does some out of the case in other directions, but it's basically bringing it up into it, and it's exhausting it out the back. So when I put in my power supply unit, I want to make sure I put my power supply unit with the fan facing downwards. Most of the time in your case, the PSU goes at the bottom, and there'll actually be a vent at the bottom, which is where it's designed to have the fan pointing down. There'll also be a dust guard, because it's sucking air in. I don't want to suck the dust in as well. So we'll see that. On the GPU, well, once again, the GPU will typically face downwards. Sometimes you can put them on their side. But that GPU has a great big heat sink, lots of fins designed to dissipate the heat. And then it has maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe 3 fans on it. Those fans are also sucking in the air. And you'll see again, there might be vents putting it outside the PC, because this is going to be facing outward. You've got your ports as well to plug in your display port, your HDMI here. There may even be some little vents coming out the top as well. Once again, it's bringing air in from the bottom, and the heat's going to go this way. Now the CPU is different. By default, the CPU doesn't really have anything. It's just this flat surface, and it's going to get really, really hot really, really quickly. So there's different solutions that we can apply to the CPU. The traditional one, and if you get something in box, and I'm rotating the direction now. If I think about this was my CPU here, so I'm now looking at it side on. There's a traditional heatsink. So the heatsink would, let's change color slightly. So the heatsink would basically sit on top, so it's covering the surface. Then you'll have some maybe copper pipes, and then that's going to go and connect to a whole bunch of fins. So it's got a whole bunch of fins to maximize the surface area. And then what you attach to this typically is 2 fans. Now there are different designs. There might be designs where it's actually 2 sets of fins and the fans spread out. But the whole point is you've got fans here, and I want them to flow in the same direction. So for example, this fan would be intaking here. This fan, so that cold air is being blown over those heat sinks, and then this is blowing in the same direction. So now this takes the heat and it blows it out that way. So the orientation of my fans would be the same way. So in this case, this side, remember this is intake, it'll be facing that way. And then on this side, it would be facing that way as well. So they're facing the same direction, so I get the heat flow going through those. So this is the heat sink and fan combination. Another option you'll commonly see now, and I'm going to flip orientation again, is an all-in-one. So with an all-in-one, yes, I've got my CPU again, but then what happens is you have a pump basically sits on top of it with, again, a big copper base, so it's drawing the heat with some thermal paste. This has thermal paste on it as well. And I can orientate, it's going to have a radiator, which is really lots of fins with water pipes going through it, and then fans again. And so I can orientate it one of two ways. So maybe it's going to have two pipes. One is going to have cold liquid coming back to it. One is going to, after it's been on here, it warms up and the heat goes away. So I could think about, hey, hot water's going that way. It may not be water, it's some other substance. The other's going this way. And then this connects to the radiator, which again is lots and lots of fins. And there's water pipes going all the way across it to connect to those to get the heat to dissipate. And then I would put my fans here. And remember, this is getting hot. So if I think orientation, I want these to be drawing in. Now, it may not be cold air in the case, because remember, there's other things like the GPU creating a bit of heat, but it's still going to be cooler than this. So it's drawing in the air. I'll draw it cool, but it's drawing in this way. So I want, again, my fan would be orientated. This nice side would be facing downwards. Those supports would be facing upwards. So it's bringing in the air, it's pushing it up that way. So then that warm air, because remember, heat rises anyway, and then it's pushing, now the air's hot because it's passed through that this way. The other orientation I could have this would be at the front of the case. So my other thing I could do is, well, instead of those pipes going there, they could maybe go down to the bottom of the case. And I still have that radiator. I've got the radiator here. Now I want to be careful, I'm drawing that poorly, because I need to make sure on the radiator, it has a point that's higher than the pump. There might be air bubbles. This is a no-brainer, it's higher than the pump. What I don't want is air bubbles to get into the pump. So the radiator part of it has to be higher than the pump. To make sure if there are any air bubbles, it's in the radiator, it's not going to get to that pump. So make sure when I'm placing this, at least some of it is higher than the pump. So then again, I would have the same thing, that radiator with all the fins right there, and then I'd have the fans on it. So maybe it's there. And once again, the orientation would be bringing in the cold air. Now the air would obviously get warmed up. So I'm now bringing in warm air into my case, but it was much colder air going over to cool the CPU. So there's pros and cons of putting it this way or this way. You have a choice. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. I don't know if it makes a huge difference. As long as you have a good airflow going through the case, you're fine. But just make sure there's at least part of it that's higher than the pump. So then bring it all together. So if those are the individual components, when I think about my complete PC, I'll try and make it a bit bigger. So there are some things we have no choice in, remember, but I want to make sure I've got that consistent airflow. Remember, I definitely want exhaust at the top because heat is going to rise anyway. And I want probably intakes at the bottom because that's where the cold air is going to be. So when I put in my components, the first thing is going to be the PSU. The power supply unit, I have no choice. So the power supply unit, let's say, sits here. It's going to have its fan. Well, it's definitely going to bring in cold air that way, and it's going to have warm air going out there. Fine. My GPU, now again, I might put it on its side, but again, for the most part, GPU, let's say, goes here, and then it's got its fans here. And once again, it's bringing in the warm air. Some of the hot air is going out that way. It may put some of it in the case as well that way. But it's going over the fins, it's getting rid of the heat. For the CPU, remember we have the two different options. But I'm going to draw the radiator just at the top. But again, it could have gone at the front. So I've got my CPU. Remember, I've got that pump sitting over it. I've got my cables, my tubes going out to my actual heat sink. And then I've got my fans attached to it. And they are going that way, orientated downwards. So the warm air is going out here. So they're my core components I just have to have. Now I can add additional fans. Remember, I want a nice airflow going through my case. There's always a gap at the top of your PC at the back. So I'm always going to put a fan here. This is always going to be exhaust. Remember, it's high up, so the warm air is rising, so I definitely want to bring in the air that's warm in the case and get rid of it. You're almost always going to have space at the front of the case as well. So I might have 2 fans, I might have 3 fans, it varies by the case, but it's nice cool air. So these are definitely going to be intake. So I'm definitely having these as intake, getting some nice cool air into my case. I may even have the ability to put a fan at the bottom of the case. Remember, cold air sinks, so this would also be an intake. I'm having that constant flow. So all of these fans, they're basically on a certain axis, the x-axis and the y-axis, they're all facing the same direction. So for these fans, they're all facing the nice pretty side. It's spinning this way, it's bringing the air in. Remember, if there was that arrow, the arrow is showing the air's going this way, facing that way, facing that way. For the air going on the y-axis going up, hey, the pretty side, I want to bring the air in. So that nice side with a nice sticker, no braces. So this side is facing down, so it's bringing the air in, the air out, air out. Again, the PSU is bringing it that way, the GPU is bringing it that way as well. Now, one thing to consider, obviously, if I had the heatsink and fan option for that CPU, when you're laying out the fans for that, I want the air to go in the same direction. So if I had that heatsink and I had the fans, which way is all of the airflow going in my case? It's coming from right to left. So for my fans, I would want them flowing the same direction. So I would want the fans going this way. So the cold air is coming into the case, coming right to left. So this would be intake, that would be exhaust. So on the heatsink, hey, this is the intake. So that would be facing that way. That would be facing that way. So the air just flows through and then would go out the back of the case. So everything is flowing in the same direction. Now, one of the additional things you will think about, well, remember there were intakes here. If I have carpet or something, this may not get any air going through it. So you might make sure there's at least some kind of legs. There's some clearance between the bottom of the case and any flooring. So maybe you need to raise it up on just some stands or put some solid bit of maybe wood under it or something, but you want some clearance. And also remember, when it's intake, it's bringing the air into the case. So what you're commonly going to see is there should be dust filters. So commonly there'll be a dust filter where the PSU goes. If you can add fans, there'll be a dust filter here. There'll be a dust filter up here. You probably even have one at the top of the case as well. This is the whole design. It's bringing air in. I don't want to bring the dust into my case. You need to clean these occasionally. So depending on how dusty the environment is, if you start to see them, you should check on them fairly frequently. Just you get one of those air blower things, blow the dust off to make sure you've still got that good airflow. Again, the fins and the components inside, hey, the air blower, make sure you keep it nice and clean. Clean the floor. If there's a whole bunch of junk on the floor that's going to be sucked into it, I don't want that either. So just really think about that whole idea of I just want a nice, good airflow going consistent directions through all of the different components. Data centers do the same thing. They have rings of temperature. So they have a hot aisle and a cold aisle. From the cold aisle, it brings air into the servers. They exhaust it out into a different aisle. It goes into the air cooling system where it cools it and then it passes back the cool air. So you get these rings of temperature. This is what this does, the all-in-one. Hey, the cold air goes, sorry, the hot air goes this way, goes through, cools down, comes back in. So you have these rings of temperature just going through the machine. Ultimately, it's not the end of the world if you get one fan in the wrong direction, but just try and keep them at a similar number, or at least more in than out. Make sure they're going in the same direction. I won't want the CPU going against where it's blowing in. It's just going to mess up the flow. It'll run a little bit hotter. My machine, I've got 3 fans at the front, I've got 1 at the back, and I've got 2 going up at the top of it, which is where I've got the AIO. So I've got AIO, 3 coming in and 3 going out. So they're all the same size, they're running at the same speed. So it should be a neutral pressure. That's it. I hope you found it useful. Till next video, take care.